right. That's it, ladies and gentlemen. Let's go to those whistles. You feel those chimes, those Tibetan chimes. Welcome back to CheeseSlice. I am your host, Greg Ula.
I'm sorry, and I'm Fiorella.
You fam. And of course, we got Jayme CheeseSlice on the ones and twos. Guys, thank you so much for joining us today. All the ways to help independent media are on the links below. We got a great show for you today. It should be kind of quick, thorough, and to the point. We talked about last week. We had a lot of things on the plate. We've been talking a lot about Venezuela, talking about a little bit about Ukraine, Russia. We're going to get into that today. But first, we have to talk about Nigeria because there have been things going on. The president of the United States said a couple weeks ago, fam, if the Nigerian government is not going to protect our beloved Christians around the world, we will step in and do so. I am telling the Department of War to ready themselves to interact. It will be swift. It will be sweet. It will be beautiful. And it will be bold. And we will protect our Christian population. Now, when we heard that, fam, I don't know about you, but when I heard that, I immediately said, oh, how inconvenient it is to protect the Christians in Gaza, to protect the Christians in Syria, to protect the Christians in Iraq. Like, that's all, they're just being bombed. Jesus is under the rubble right now, but you want to talk about our beloved Christians. And it made, a bell go off in my head. I'm like, okay, what do we want in Nigeria? Well, I know that Nigeria in Africa probably has the most oil than any other African state out there. It's big. There's a lot of gold over there too as well. So I don't know, fam. Maybe we want the oil. What do you think, fam?
I mean, we're always after the resources. Yeah, but this has also been used as an opportunity for a lot of the people in the U.S. to weaponize this against other minorities, whether it's, Muslims or whether it's other people. This whole idea that Christians are being attacked is being politicized. While it is happening, primarily it's being done by a lot of the same people, right? So a lot of the people behind the same attacks that we are seeing throughout. And I started talking about this my last podcast with Vanessa about how there is an attack on Christians, but a lot of that is coming from Zionists as well. So there's a lot to unwrap around all of this. So take it away.
I'm in the middle of this podcast too by Margaret Kimberly, Black Alliance, right? And it's interesting. So I haven't got through that whole thing, but I read some articles and I had to kind of digress. But she did set me straight on what's going on. And it's easy to call these things. This is a book right now that I got. It's called Covert Regime Change. I'm only into the first 20 pages, fam. It was actually recommended by Jeffrey Sachs on Judge Napolitano's show. And, I thought it would be just like another regime change book, kind of laying out what the CIA is. But this book is very interesting, fam, because as an actor, I remember that I would always try to have to find motivations for my lines. Like, why am I saying this? Why am I feeling this way? How should I react, right? And that kind of tapped into the abstract thinking. That's why I think art is so important. This book, and I'm only through the first 20 pages, speaks to exactly why we have regime changes, right? Like, sometimes it's more than just resource extraction and thrusting our monetary system on that country so we can then obtain and take those resources through austerity measures. But there's other reasons. There's regional hegemony, there's proxy wars, whatnot. And this book does a really great job of doing that. And it really says a lot to what's going on in Nigeria today, Nicaragua too, but Nigeria today. You know what I'm saying? And a lot of this kind of information that was put out publicly started earlier this year. Let's get to what happened. We heard Donald Trump say the other day that he was going to get ready the Department of War to bomb Nigeria because Christians are being slaughtered. I don't know if you remember this, fam, but when South Africa came to the White House, you probably do remember this several months ago, he played him the video of, once again, white people getting murdered in Africa. So he's been setting the table for these actions by duping the American people. And, unfortunately, a lot of people go along with it. 2 weeks ago, I debuted on this right-wing Christian radio show, and they were talking about helping out Christians in Nigeria. It was my first time, so I didn't say anything, but I said some stuff last show, which was this past Saturday, saying how the CIA actually funds Boko Haram. Play the video, Jayme. Let's take a look at this. This is the senator in a hearing. I believe it's Senator Perry from Pennsylvania. Take a listen. This was back in February.
Who gets some of that money? Does that name ring a bell to anybody in the room? Because your money, $697 million annually, plus the shipments of cash funds madrasas, ISIS, Al-Qaeda, Boko Haram. ISIS Khorasan, terrorist training camps. That's what it's funding. If you think that the program under Operation Enduring Sentinel, entitled Women's Scholarship Endowment, which receives $60 million annually, or the Young Women Lead, which gets about $5 million annually, is going to women who, by the way, if you read the Inspector General's report, is telling you that the Taliban does not allow women to speak in public. Yet somehow you're believing, and American people are supposed to believe, that this money is going for the betterment of the women in Afghanistan. It is not. You are funding terrorism, and it's coming through USAID. And it's not just Afghanistan, because Pakistan's right next door. USAID spent $840 million in the last 20 years on Pakistan's education-related program. It includes $136 million to build 120 schools, of which there is zero evidence that any of them were built. Why would there be any evidence? The Inspector General can't get in to see them. But you know what? We doubled down and spent $20 million from USAID to create educational television programs for children unable to attend the physical school. Yeah, they can't attend it because it doesn't exist. You paid for it. Somebody else got the money. You are paying for terrorism. This has got to end. I yield, Mr. Chairman.
Okay, so that really kind of, fam, just really sparked a whole, chain of reactions. Then all of a sudden, foreign ministers, ex-ministers of Sudan, all these other countries were starting to finger it. They would keep quiet about this, fam, because they don't want to bite the hand that feeds them. There's obviously millions and billions of dollars of aid coming into these countries. So if you criticize their intelligence apparatus of playing games against you, you could get your hand slapped. But it then all of a sudden, fam, sparked a chain reaction and people started speaking. And then we started getting an idea. Now, this happened back in February. So February and March, we were kind of getting an idea. Oh, wouldn't you know? Now there's coming out evidence that, USAID through the CIA wing is funding Boko Haram. Why would they do that? Well, that's the military industrial chain that's going, right? Now we got to provide weapons, whatnot. We can present a solution because we create a problem. And that's what this book talks about. This is not just a one-off, fam. This is our behavior. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, this is what we do all over the world, and I think the Trump administration is tasked to pivot it to the South. We're seeing, and we will see, I think, during Trump's presidency, a momentary closure with Russia, Ukraine, and then pivoting to the global South, because the global South primarily has the areas that are, one, more resistant to empire, have been resistant or at least fighting it for some time, have had some sort of reawakening, especially in the Sahel region, against the neocolonialism of France, the neocolonialism of the British, and of the United States. And there has been strong pushback. We have seen it in Burkina Faso. We have seen it throughout the region. And so you're going to have a renewed focus on that in a way to crush it. As we mentioned, we're also going to have, too, the focus on the natural resources, whether it's oil, minerals, special minerals that will be used in this new revolution that we're entering in with big tech, with AI. And then you also have what is becoming part of a larger, broader, I think this is kind of, it's hard to picture it, but everything is connected. So we're talking about things at a global level now, how the world is changing, and everybody's been talking about multipolarity, right? And what that's going to look like. Well, that's going to look like multiple powers instead of just one. So people assume that that means that there's going to be equity, but that doesn't necessarily mean that. It just means that there will be more powers. You're going to have China, Russia included, perhaps Saudi Arabia, perhaps India coming to the rise. But a lot of the same people that have been pretty much exploited are still continuing to be exploited one way or another. And I really want to have a conversation with Marwa, because she wrote an excellent article on Sudan and how China's role in really keeping down the development of Sudan via the exploitation of these minerals. So it doesn't matter who ultimately. And I think this points to the global capitalist market. So there is a competition now, right? Especially between China and Russia, China and the United States. There's a huge competition between that. Who's going to be the top dog? And I think we can honestly say that China has surpassed the United States in many ways, not just what they've provided for their people, but what they have done in terms of global capital growth. And they have amassed this ability to really be able to develop products and export them, whereas we import everything and we're extremely vulnerable. So I think this is all part of that. And the Trump administration has been tasked to essentially focus on that and carry this out. And of course, they're going to do it with the same playbook that they've been using for the longest time. So this is something that I think a lot of people haven't talked about, and I'm glad we're talking about it, because Africa is one of those areas where there needs to be much more of a focus than there has been. And there's so much that we don't know because it's just never been a part of it. But yeah, like Africa, South America, and Middle East, that's what we're looking at.
And, you can look back to, Obama with his, uplifting of sorts of AFRICOM, putting a lot of money into it, getting the drones ready. And then, Donald Trump came in and armed those drones. So let's go to the ex-foreign minister right now. This is from African Stream. Our good friend Ahmed Cabello did some great stuff. Nigerian minister drops Boko Haram USAID bombshell. On February 18th, former Nigerian foreign minister Balaj Akinyemi, I'll try to do that better, dropped a bombshell amidst revelations that the recently dismantled U.S. International Agency for Development, which is USAID, had allegedly been funding terrorist groups like Boko Haram. We'll let you hear him talk about it right now. We'll play the video. But fam, really quickly, I just want to say USAID has not been completely, get the video ready, Jayme. USAID has not been completely dismantled. There's still the wing of using it for regime change, and all this little money that Doge was talking about, and a lot of the populist right was screaming about it. I don't want to pay for gender studies in the Sudan and stuff. That's a small amount of the money they were spending for all this stuff. The majority of that money that went through USAID, and that wing is still operable, was for regime change. They were the PR firm for regime change. That's what they are. Plain and simple. And they still admit, once again, here is the ex-prime minister talking about it. And that this is after the bombshell of Senator Perry saying this stuff on the floor. He then gave the power for these people to start questioning what happened. Listen to what he says.
I served on the Boko Haram committee. Now, 2 plus 2 at times has to be equal to 4. So even if I can't give you 4, but I can give you 2 plus 2, we will then have to come to the conclusion that I'm giving you 4. I served on that committee, and villagers kept telling us that in the middle of the night, helicopters piloted by white people kept landing and offloading guns, goods, and all kinds of and money to these people. Now, villagers they don't even know who these white people are, and they have no reason to lie to us. Now, we made a mistake. When I said we, some of us on the Boko Haram committee made a mistake. We thought it was the French that were doing this. Now we have an American congressman said, no, it was the Americans who were doing this. And when you then add that to the Obama administration refusing to sell weapons to us, to Nigeria, on the grounds that we had human rights violations in the way we were dealing with Boko Haram, not in the way we were dealing with ordinary Nigerians where there were no security issues.
I know that was a little bit long, but we needed to play that also. You can understand what was going on, fam. They were flying in helicopters. It's in the northeast region where Boko Haram exists. And just like we aided ISIS, just like we aided Al-Qaeda, we aided Boko Haram. They do our dirty work, right? And they bring instability, which is a big problem. And then the solution is American bombs get dropped. It's not a one-off, like I said before. This is our behavior. Fam, I got some more stuff. I got some more stuff from the generals and whatnot. If you want to see it, or do you want to say something about this right now? Because this is like, make sure you play that video right there, the one on the right with the general.
Just quickly, in terms of what he said, is extremely important that people know that when it comes to Barack Obama, he was one of the worst possible figures and possible presidents of the United States for Africa. And that is precisely why the powers that be positioned him there, and specifically why he, as somebody with African descent, was specifically placed to really destroy much of Africa in many ways. And it is a reminder for all of the left liberals that want to talk about only identity politics and only that sort of symbolic BS. A reminder as to why that is weaponized against people. It's been weaponized, of course. Now we've seen it, with AOC. Yeah. We're seeing it with Zora Mamdani. We've seen it. Every single thing that the Democratic Party can weaponize, they'll do it. But notice how the Trump administration is continuing that same effort. Yeah. With a conservative administration, with the Republican administration. Ultimately, again, when it comes to foreign policy, there is no difference between the two. They just continue what the other didn't finish and rebrand it in a way that is acceptable to the current dominant perspective. And of course, after Joe Biden, you had the right populism become aware of things. And so now they're trying to market it, essentially. It's a giant marketing campaign. Market it to them so they accept it. The same way they've marketed surveillance via the border issue, the same way they've marketed the attacks on people and illegals as something necessary in order to protect Americans, and the narco war on drugs is an effort to protect Americans. This is why we have to go into Venezuela. This is why we have to go into Mexico. All of this is just basically marketing. Yeah. And so they're marketing, instead of a product, they're marketing an entire imperial agenda, essentially. And you have to buy that.
So we have the Sudanese president here back in 2015 talking about, fam, and this is something you had kind of alluded to, that it's not just the CIA, the Mossad is involved too as well. And it's just like, it's a colonization project going on over in Israel right now, in occupied Palestine right now. We have that same behavior, what we did to the Native Americans over here, right? Wipe them out and stuff. So of course we're going to go along and aid our buddies. And that's the thing. We're doing this together in Africa because we are one and the same. That's it. That's who we are. We're attached to the hip. It's not one-offs, it's behavior right now. And the way we do things are disgusting. This is the Sudanese president back in 2015, fam.
He says the CIA and Mossad are behind Boko Haram and ISIL. He was speaking exclusively to Euronews in the week that ISIL released a video purporting to show the execution of 21 Egyptians.
I said CIA and the Mossad stand behind these organizations. There is no Muslim who would carry out such acts.
He says the CIA and Mossad are behind Boko Haram and ISIL.
And this, once again, this is the same behavior. And this is the groups we've been funding since the Mujahideen, right? The CIA in Russia, in Afghanistan, to ISIS, to Al-Qaeda, to funding. You see going on in Gaza right now today, Boko Haram in Nigeria. this is what goes on. This is what happens. This is what the CAA does. This is what the Mossad does. They work together for this. It's destabilization projects. It's resource extraction. Here's the general of the armed forces. He did an interview with Al Jazeera English, whatnot. And once again, he's being very careful, fam. You don't want to bite the hand that feeds you, right? You don't want to kind of just come out and accuse the United States there, because that could hurt on the funding that you're going to get. You don't want to do that. You'll be thrown out. So watch how careful he is. But he's kind of explaining, hey, man, this is an international. Get the UN here. Let them take a look at it.
I just can't understand why anybody will wake up and say that we're killing people when we're actually not doing the same. And guess what? Where the Giwa barracks you were talking about, we have all the humanitarian agencies working there. You have the UN working, local and international organizations are working. Are we saying they are complicit? There is nothing we're doing in the back. So if they don't say it, which means Amnesty International is equal, and Amnesty is equally there. So which means they're equally accusing all these other organizations of being complicit.
So just to be clear, you would be prepared to go to the ICJ in The Hague and answer these accusations?
We're not scared of anything because we don't have anything of such.
We've seen Boko Haram regroup and regroup and regroup. What is your answer to that? That you have in some way fed the insurgents?
The problem is that I think we've talked to international community. Let's find out the funding. When they started surrendering, by the time we left, so as we speak, we have over 120,000 that have surrendered. Most of them, when you find them, they are coming with hard currencies. How did they get them? How are they funded? How did they get the training? How did they get the equipment?
What is your suspicion?
Well, maybe an international conspiracy. You don't know. Who knows? How are they be able to sustain themselves for 15 years? That is one question I think everybody should ask himself. For Nigeria to be able to hold them, and you go to Nigeria, everything seems to be working well.
You must have an idea. I mean, let's not talk about international conspiracy theories. Let's give some hard facts.
Well, I just leave it at that. I'm sure they know, and I'm sure everybody knows that these are the challenges we're facing, that needs to be addressed. So the UN need to come in to ensure that, because we need to trace the funding. How are they sustaining themselves for 15 years?
What does the UN coming in mean? What does that look like?
Track the funding. It's international flow. We don't have control over that.
Whose interest is it to see Nigeria destabilize?
Well, I don't know. You don't know. Your guess is as good as mine.
To be fair, he doesn't want to say it, but he knows, right? Like, we know who's going to get rid of that. We know who's going to benefit from the destabilization of Nigeria. It's the next guy who gets in there, right? And now you have Donald Trump rehashing this, bringing this back up. Why? Because his base, once again, they're suckers for it, fam. You say Christians are being prosecuted. Oh, it's not, Israel, Gaza. They like to turn their head on that. They don't want to talk about that, right? They don't want to act Christ-like and call that out. But, Christians are being slaughtered in Nigeria. Go in there, Donald Trump. I mean, I'm so sorry, but they're very gullible, or they're purposely ignoring the facts, and they're okay with what's going on, fam.
It's hypocrisy, Pasta. It's because we can only be upset if it serves our interests. So it's like, for example, a lot of the people on the right now care about the Christians being slaughtered in Nigeria, but at the same time, they don't say much about what's happening in Syria and all the Christians being slaughtered there. As you mentioned, all the Christians in Palestine, all over the West Asia by specific, former Al-Qaeda terrorists that are taking over. And so that is completely pushed aside because whatever, these are people that deserve it, or whatever kind of reasoning they want to make up for that. Right. And so now they're using this. And again, just like the Democrats weaponize ethnic groups for their ultimate political purposes, we're seeing that now in the right weaponize Christians all over the world, and depending on what's, efficient. So it is enraging, but we always have to, of course, go beyond our emotion and look a little bit deeper as to why that's being fed to people right now. And that also ties into the immigration issue, the Islamophobia that we're seeing, not just in the United States, but also in the UK, with the likes of Tommy Robinson and others who are promoting this idea that it's just a bunch of Muslim men coming in and raping women. But when you look at the statistics, the majority of the rapists, and this is something I also talked about with Vanessa, are actually from the UK, and they do happen to be Caucasian. But those facts get pushed aside in order to push the narrative that, you know, it's a bunch of crazy radical Islamic jihadists coming in through the border. And the thing is, there are immigration issues, but again, we go back to, why is the United States in Africa? Why is the United States in Iraq? Why are they threatening the Middle East? Why are they doing all of this and then expecting zero blowback of their consequences? Same with Latin America, as you know.
So, Jayme, yeah, get the graphic up over here. This is from the TRT Africa article I got about the USAID. I just took a piece of it. Let me read it for you real quick, because after, and it pretty much, the article went over a lot of the things we shown. I showed the videos, whatnot. So pretty much after this happened, after the senator blew the whistle, the president of Nigeria started, he recalled the senator to come to the Capitol and have conversations. They had, you know, they've had these committees before to look at Boko Haram, not understanding where the funding was going. At one point, they thought it was from France, fam, right? Because France has a longstanding, you know, history of being inside Africa, stealing the diamonds and all the resources, whatnot. But then after that happened, they're like, oh, no, man, the United States, they're blowing the whistle. That's who's coming for us now. France goes out. One superpower goes out. The other superpower goes in. Senator Ali Ndume from Nigeria's northeast region, where Boko Haram has been perpetrating, atrocities since 2009, pressed for a thorough investigation. He linked Perry's accusations to long-standing suspicions about international nonprofits aiding terrorist outfits in the region, including providing firearms and training. Nigerian security agencies have raised this issue indirectly several times. The government of Borno State has always been wary of the operations of some NGOs, Ndume said, referring to the state worst affected by the Boko Haram violence. And that's from TRT Africa. Fam, they're starting to put it together. They're putting the pieces together. Nigeria's trying to do everything to defend itself, saying this isn't a persecution against Christians, because even though they were killing Christians, in this particular situation, when they did the study, they saw that at one point more Muslims were being killed. You know what I'm saying? It's not about religion. It's about it's about unhinging the government over there at the aid of the United States, the West, the Zionists, to go in there and control those resources. Nigeria has a ton of oil, a lot of it, and the United States would like it. Just like Venezuela is evil too. Their person's evil now. You know, and that this is what we got going on. Now you got the Trump administration lying through their fucking teeth. This guy is the worst, Donald Trump. I mean, his administration is the worst because, unfortunately, a lot of the conservatives and the populist right have their head in the clouds. They really do, right? And I challenge them. They say they're Christian to act more Christ-like. This is not good, right? You're not protecting Christians. As a Christian, you're supposed to care about all of God's children. And what's going on with the CIA is doing, not just in Nigeria, but in Latin America, in the Middle East, in West Asia, and all these other places, what they are doing is wrong. And it's evil. And it's being done at our tax dollar under our name. Look at this next tweet over here, fam. And this is what the capture, this is what I was so worried about, right? This is Wall Street Apes. Now, 1 second, Jayme, can you click on Wall Street Apes' bio, his name? Let's see how many people he got. What does he have? How many people? Look who follows him, right? Donald Trump. He followed by Elon Musk, Joe Rogan, Donald Trump, Dan Bongino, Alex Jones, James O'Keefe. He's got 1.2 million views, right? And I noticed this Twitter account during Lahaina. Put a lot of great stuff up there, calling out Wall Street, acting like an anti-imperialist. Let's go back to his tweet now, right? I'm going to pull it up really quickly, fam, because this is the propaganda that we are faced with all the time over here in the United States. This is how they get these people. Ex-Muslim, all right? This is what they like to do. And I just experienced this right now, where a Christian is saying that, calling them Mohammedans or Muslims, right? That they are inherent liars, that they are permitted to lie, that they are evil, that there are so many bad things in the Torah or the Quran, excuse me, right? You know, so many bad things, and ignoring all the stupid stuff in the Bible, like the fact that it says a rebellious kid can be stoned to death, that if you see somebody working on the Sabbath on Sunday, you should kill them. There are crazy things in the Bible. It's up to interpretation to leave the bad things out and realize that you're in modern day times and look at the good stuff, just like you should when it comes to communism and capitalism. But look at this here. This is the shit, the propaganda we are fighting against. Ex-Muslim man talking about the threat of Islam. Allah will install fear in the hearts of those who disbelieve Islam and Muslims. You cut their limbs by hitting their necks. Why do terrorist organizations such as ISIS, such as Boko Haram, even the Taliban behead people? It says it in the Quran. And then there's a whole video there, fam, of him. Jayme, let's play the first couple, like maybe the first minute. Let's go full screen real quickly. I'm going to take myself off. Play like a minute of this real quick, and then we'll talk about it.
The problem with Islam is that Islam is an absolutist religion where Muslims believe this is the word of God, aka Allah, and no man can ever question the word of Allah, which is extremely problematic, and it has no place in any civilized culture. So I'm going to go through the verses, and I want you to make up your own minds, okay? So let's go through it one by one. Chapter 2, verse 98. Allah is an enemy of non-Muslims. Chapter 3, verse 85. No other religion is accepted other than Islam. Chapter 8, verse 12. Allah will instill fear in the hearts of those who disbelieve Islam and Muslims. You cut their limbs by hitting their necks. And as you know, why do terrorist organizations such as ISIS, such as Boko Haram, even Taliban behead people? Where do you think they get that from? It says in the Quran. Chapter 3, verse 118. Make only Muslims your intimate friend. Chapter 3, verse 28, and chapter 9, verse 23. Do not make friends with non-Muslims. And maybe that's why some Muslims, they don't assimilate when they come to the UK or anywhere else for that matter. They stay in their own group because it's in the Quran. Well, don't make friends with non-Muslims. Chapter 8, verse 39. Fight non-Muslims until the faith of Allah is fully established. And that is basically a call to action. And as I always said, one of the responsibility of Muslims is to do jihad and to Islamize the whole world. I'm not saying it. This is in the Quran.
All right. So you get the gist of what's going on, fam. And I know this is like an old tactic, but it has really been revamped, reignited since the Trump administration. The theocratic mentality is back in. I see this all the time. Mondami's victory sparked this on that Christian show that I was on. They couldn't stop talking about that. That was a big thing, as if, you know, Sharia law is coming to town. I mean, from this milquetoast guy in America. I mean, please, you know, this is scary. And that video over there only had 150,000 views. That's little for that account. But this is the constant shit we're going through right now. These are the voices that were elevated when they made the switch to the Republican Donald Trump administration. Our voices still got down. Jared Beck still doesn't have his account, the guy who brought out the Bernie Sanders lawsuit against the DNC. The constant propaganda that's in our faces all the time. This is what we're battling. You couple this right over here, where Muslims are bad, Christians are the right religion, the Jewish people are the chosen ones, right, from the Zionists. You couple all this together, Christians are getting slaughtered here. The next thing you know, bombs are dropping over there. This is what we're facing. The behavior hasn't changed. It's just accelerated. And it's taken on a new, different face of marketing, fam, for what we're going to see, which is constant empire. Go ahead, fam.
Yeah, so one, we need to mention the X propaganda and how certain influencers are being used to promote certain narratives. And you're seeing that's one of the major ones, the Islamophobia, the, you know, turning against Muslims, because especially one, Israel has been exposed thoroughly. The United States has been also exposed thoroughly throughout the genocide in Gaza. So you're seeing now the backlash to that, right? And Mamdani, of course, is an example of that. He's a radical Islamist communist, right? Or he's none of that. And that also doesn't mean he's good either, but he's none of that, what they're saying. And then you're also seeing the UK stuff that I mentioned with Tommy Robinson. All of these voices are there to push this narrative. And that narrative, who does it help? It helps the Zionists. It helps imperialism, because it allows to the manufacturing of consent for more intervention, for more war. And, you know, as Pasta mentioned, the reality is every single dogmatic religion, whether it's Christianity, Islam, or Judaism, they all have something in them that is seen as radical or extreme. And to use an former Muslim man or former believer of Islam to promote this is the same thing that the right does with Black Americans who say that racism doesn't exist and blah, blah, blah. And they get on their soapbox and they advocate for this the same way. Of course, the other side does it as well. They need these figures in order to promote the propaganda, because what's more valid than a former Islamic believer getting up there and telling you how bad Islam is? I mean, they're going to swallow it up entirely. I mean, this is what sells. So they got this guy on there and they got him promoted by the major accounts on X that get seen all the time, no matter what you do. Mm-hmm. And this is now the new form of propaganda, because they figured out that they don't need ads. They don't necessarily need mainstream media. Now they've gone and taken our independent media space and captured it. And this is what I've been talking about now for a while, guys. You can't just agree with something a random person says on X and think that they're on your side, because why they're saying it matters. And when that pivot comes, you won't be surprised if you actually do your research and say, who's this account? Where are they from? When did they show up? What exactly is their aim in promoting certain things and not promoting certain things? Like, you have to be vigilant, because if we're going to be free speech people, we also have to be aware of all the kind of bullshit that you're being fed and propagandized with too, because I'm all for having a free internet. Simultaneously, though, you got to be a little bit smarter than just assuming that because somebody says free Palestine, that it's the same thing as, say, somebody else. And it creates more work for us, because then we have to talk about the nuances of things that are being thrown out there. Nobody's saying that, all dogmatic religions are perfect, or that Islam is perfect, or that Christianity is perfect. But how are you talking about Islam right now when the ones that are killing and causing chaos throughout the world right now are Zionists? And of course, that's now being put
and Christians
on the back burner. Yeah, and Christians, but like let's be real. I mean, right now it's the expansion of Greater Israel combined. It's Christian Zionism is essentially what's taking over, and that's like that's being like whatever. What in an effort to highlight the danger of Islam. And it works on so many people, because so many people have never been to a Middle Eastern country. So many Americans have a perception that the Middle East is just a bunch of like desert and bombs and people that have faces covered up. That's literally what they think. If you talk to a regular normie, they don't have any concept of what it is. They don't know how beautiful Iran is. They don't know how many interesting things there are to see there, or Iraq, or any of these places in the region. And like, they have no idea. And when I've had these conversations, when I'm like, I was in Lebanon, or it's so beautiful. It's like Italy. They're like, what are you talking about? Oh my God, Lebanon. It's the same thing that they've said about Russia. It really, that's the mentality that we're working against. And so it's very tough to do that and like undo years and years of brainwashing, right? That we've been just growing up with.
And fam, you talked about the timing of a lot of this stuff, what's going on with Venezuela, with the elections coming up in Honduras at the end of this month, in a couple weeks. Jesus, in 3 weeks we got an election. Less than 3 weeks we got an election in Honduras. Next year we got an election in Nicaragua. Mandami getting elected, right? Like I said, if I was going to write a script and I want to divide the people even more right now and get them into ideological battles, I'd put Mandami in play. It doesn't surprise me that Donald Trump is talking about bombing Nigeria because Christians are being killed right when Mandami's getting elected, because that's what's really stirred a lot of the people up here. They feel that their Christianity is under attack, that Sharia law is coming to America. And once again, I said, if you can find out a way to make a person a victim, they'll go along with anything. You're a victim. Christians, you're under attack. They were trying to. This is the stuff that Nick Fuentes said the other day, right? Like he pivoted right to it. There's a Holocaust of Christians. Yeah. Give me a fucking break, Nick Fuentes. Give me a break, everybody out there. They got you. They're playing with you again. This is not anything to do with religion. This has to do with oligarchs and the 1% taking the resources and not giving a damn about human life in general, except their own. And that's what we're facing. Constant propaganda.
Yeah.
All the ways to help. Sorry, go, fam.
No, you're absolutely right. I mean, it's hard to fight the propaganda at every corner.
And it's the timing is so like, it's man, they got to go in the Mandami thing. And then all of a sudden you hear all these talks from all these people about Christianity under attack, going after Muslims, kind of stating that they're inherent liars. Look what this guy's talking about. It's just ridiculous. There are bad things in all these Abrahamic religions, and they are being Jewish, Islam, Christianity are Abrahamic religions. Can't try to twist it. You can try to cherry pick and change that. The Abrahamic religions. If you want to sit out there, and this is why I say religion shouldn't be involved with our politics. I don't care if they meant it to be or they didn't meant it to be, meaning the forefathers when our country was created. I don't care because it's always going to digress to my God is greater than your God. I'm agnostic, or even an atheist can have the same belief as an agnostic. You don't need a set of laws written down to tell you what is right versus wrong. I know it's not right to murder my neighbor, and I don't need the 10 commandments to tell me that it's right. Sorry for getting pissed off, because we do have a fucking chance here, ladies and gentlemen, if we get our shit together to make this world a better place. But we got to recognize who the enemy is. We got to recognize who is playing us. And you need to lock in, Americans, lock in. Don't get played like a fool with this Mandami thing. The way you're freaking out. All the ways to help the show and independent media are listed down below. If you'd like to help out the TruthWire, please click one of those links down below and send us some love. And thank you to everybody who's hanging out over there, the regs. We love you so much. I saw Gabrielle Freedom hanging out in the chat. Some new names, too, as well out there. OTR Trucker, Old School Fam, we love you. Thank you so much for hanging out. I want to send a special thank out to CheeseSlice, of course. Fred Edward is there. I wore your favorite shirt, Fred. Asked the crew before the show was saying we were talking about my shirt being a Miami Vice shirt. I bought it for $4.99, I think, or $3.99 in a Goodwill. I said it's Fred Edwards' favorite shirt of mine, and that's why I'm wearing it today, because I got to show him some love. 3-Chord Grifter, we love you too as well.
It's late 80s, early 90s attire. It's on Amazon for like $9.99 for an 80s party. Yeah. I know because I went to an 80s party and people were wearing that. Yep.
Kit Cabello was hanging on out too as well.
Shout out to Heartlands Media. Moscow pizza is way better.
Fam.
It's way better than Chicago.
It's not Moscow pizza. It's Italian pizza in Moscow. Just like I saw in Nicaragua when I was in San Juan del Sur. They were from Napoli or Rome. I can't believe. I think the wife might have been from Rome. The husband from Napoli. They own the pizzeria and the gelato place. Me and Wyatt went and grabbed the pie. I was like, holy cow. That was the most amazing thing about the last trip in Nicaragua. The food is off the charts. And guess what, fam? It's limpio, which is Spanish for clean. No pesticides.
No, thank you for telling me. Thank you for informing me.
I'm sorry. I'm trying to be funny. Just great food in Nicaragua. We went to an Italian restaurant, me, Gloria, and Wyatt in the Managua. Fam, it was one of the best Italian food experiences. I couldn't believe it. I was blown away. And we had all the good stuff that they were showing off, like the carpaccio, which was their locally grown, sustainable beef over there. Was amazing. The capers, everything they had on the plate was just delicious. And if you ever get a chance, go on back, ladies and gentlemen. Go to Nicaragua. Check it on out. Go to San Juan del Sur. Go have fun. You can go to Esteli in the mountains. It's a beautiful country. It's a great place. In poor, but nobody's homeless, and there's plentiful food there, and just good vibes, good people, and the air is clean. So please go check it out. And the ceviche. I mean, it's not Peruvian ceviche, but it's good ceviche. It's local ceviche, so you got to give it that, fam.
No such thing as ceviche unless it's Peruvian. Basically, so let's
get fam in there.
Yeah. That's just Fiorella's law. Fam, so let's chat about the next thing. This is going to be kind of surprising, I think, for some people, but Vanessa and I have been talking about this for a long time, and I wanted to introduce it to you all because I think it's time to talk about this stuff. So I've been in Russia for about 3 years, and I've gotten to know a pretty rounded perspective that isn't, again, here on the TruthWire, we always look at things with nuance. We always look at things beyond the dual lens of just, black and white. We look at things a little bit more deeply. We expose things first. So I wanted to really bring this up regarding Russia, Ukraine, because I think I've not heard most analysts talk about it in this way. So obviously Russia has the upper hand in this, right? And I want to bring up I added an article, Jayme, because I just want to set the stage with this. Russia is pretty much encroaching Ukraine. We are seeing less and less Ukrainian bodies able to go to war and fight because there's literally, they're getting down to the last Ukrainians. I mean, even Angelina Jolie's security was taken recently, which made, the news, because how could he be taken? He thought he was beyond that. And so Russia has now pretty much advanced in several key cities. And they've advanced specifically, and they've encircled Ukraine in the city of Kupiansk in Ukraine's Kharkov region. And so last month, Vladimir Putin said that at least 10,000 Ukrainian soldiers had been surrounded. And this was not just in Kupiansk, but also in Pokrovsk, which is the other city that we have seen just entirely encircled by Russia, right? We're seeing things progress simultaneously. And this is now what's going on the military front, right? I'm not going to go too deep into that because what I really want to talk more so about is what's going to happen as a result of all of this. So we have seen for the last year, since about February, since Donald Trump came into the presidency, essentially, conversations had between the United States and Russia on ending the war in Ukraine. We know that the United States has had these conversations with Russia because Ukraine is a puppet, government, a puppet entity, essentially now. We know that they're not pulling the strings. We know Zelensky's not in charge. So the conversations have been had, and they've been had pretty out in the open. We haven't heard, though, the details of these conversations. But if you look at the reporting from February on, conversations have involved cooperation between the United States and Russia. These conversations have involved the Arctic, major cooperation in the Arctic, major cooperation with rare earth minerals in Donbass and Ukraine. And the United States is extremely interested in that because of, obviously, resource extraction. But also we have seen a weird thing happen, which has thrown people off, because simultaneously the EU has increased its tax against Russia. The EU has increased its attacks on the Russian people. They've made it now harder for Russians to travel throughout Europe. For example, to get a visa, a Schengen visa, that's a multiple entry visa. So if you're Russian and you want to get a visa, it's going to be next to impossible to get a multiple entry visa. You're going to have to provide your entire itinerary. You have to even provide your bank account, all of this stuff, right? And so it's gotten worse between the EU and Russia, but it's gotten better between Russia and the United States. And we have heard this both from the Putin administration and the Trump administration. So Putin's people have constantly said that they're glad that they're having a conversation with Donald Trump, because with Joe Biden, you couldn't even have this conversation before. It was like impossible to even have this conversation. So looking at what we just talked about with the focus in Africa, and previously we've talked about the focus in the Middle East, right? The U.S. threatening Iraq, and their elections were this Sunday, by the way. They had some elections this Sunday. And according to Iraq, everything went according to plan. We have also seen, of course, Israel advance into Lebanon and attack Lebanon, southern Lebanon in particular. And we have also simultaneously seen the United States attack Latin America, in particular Venezuela and Colombia. So all of this is happening at the same time. Donald Trump needs to end this war in Ukraine one way or another during his administration, during his presidency. And one of the main guys that is Putin's top advisor, especially in dealing with economics, is Dmitriev. Can we bring him up right here? Let's talk about Dmitriev. Now, I want to bring him up, Kirill Dmitriev, because he is, I think, somebody that a lot of people may not know. Now, you've seen him with an interview with Laura Logan. You've seen him do interviews on mainstream media. Before I go into this, you can keep it there. He always talks about the connections that the United States and Russia have when it comes to Christian values. Now, all of this is related to everything Pasta just talked about. Kirill Dmitriev has been retweeting a lot of the anti-woke, left-wing stuff. He has even retweeted Tommy Robinson in the UK. He has been promoting this idea that, Russia and the United States have these constant, this alignment together. And of course, referring,
Is it like a cultural, religious alignment?
Well, I would say like a cultural Christian value, right? Like the Christian values, right? Now, what he's referring to is the fact that he's looking at America as a Christian nation. He's looking at Russia as a Christian nation. Now, this is what he posted recently. He said, new, real Donald Trump on Ukraine. I think we have made a lot of progress. Productive 3-day meeting in the U.S. with Stephen Witkoff last week discussed path to peace, trade, economic cooperation, and the U.S. proposal to prohibit Nazi ideology in Ukraine. More progress soon. Kirill Dmitriev is not speaking out of his ass. He's actually the Stephen Witkoff of Putin, okay? Wow. So while Lavrov is Marco Rubio, he is like the Stephen Witkoff. He's out there trying to have conversations and make deals. And let's hear what Donald Trump said before we move on, and let's go back to his Wikipedia page. So let's hear what Donald Trump said on this, and then we'll discuss.
3 months ago, my administration also brokered a historic peace agreement between nearby Armenia and Azerbaijan, one of the 8 wars that we ended in 8 months. At that time, 8 months, we're looking to end one more, if that's possible, Russia and Ukraine. We haven't gotten there yet, but I think we've made a lot of progress. 3 months ago.
So the way, first of all, I want to say Azerbaijan thing, it's long been like this. It's just now coming out in terms of Azerbaijan having, other relationships with the U.S. and the West. I mean, this has been already there. It's just not, they're making it more of a big deal than what it is. A lot of people are. So a lot of people will look at that and they're like, oh my God, Donald Trump is full of it. He's not interested in really resolving this with Russia. And the thing is, the deep state is really never going to look at Russia as an equal. They're never going to give them a good deal. They're never going to, actually be fair and try to end some sort of war that's been just decades and decades, because they look at Russia as they've looked at Russia as a threat. However, when we look at the conversations that have been having, while a lot of people poo-poo that, the reality is how Russia is and what Russia wants. Now, as somebody that's been living here for now 3 years, the Russian government is an extremely pragmatic government. Now, it's not a monolith. When I talk about, for example, Vladimir Putin and his administration and how they look at things, they look at things in the interest of Russia. They look at things as advancing economically, advancing diplomatically. They've said it many times. They want to be friends with everybody. This is why you see Russia having an open relationship that they're even promoting outright with Israel. They've been having that relationship for years, for decades, with now Jelani or Al-Shara, the former head chopper, former Al-Qaeda, who they rolled out the red carpet for. because they see that relationship as a necessity to advance their interests in keeping their bases, okay, in Syria. And in order for them to keep their bases in Syria, they have to have a relationship with the new government in Syria. They have to have a relationship with Israel, and they also have to engage in conversations with the United States. And that is a fact. You cannot keep your relationship in your bases in Syria without that, because Syria has been carved up and is being currently carved up among NATO, among Israel, and also, of course, clearly Russia has a stake in all of this.
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead. You laugh, so I kind of want to know why you laugh.
No, I have because I'm laughing because I got questions here, and I don't want you to move on until I have these questions. Okay, so listen, I think what I've learned since you've been in Russia about Russia's relationship, how different it is. You used to say the term, it's not always roses, right? However, you were very cautious about what you're saying because you're not a Russian citizen. You feel fine criticizing America because this is where you're born and you have the right to hold that country accountable. But your feeling was, well, it's not always all roses over here, meaning like the people, the ideologues who, you know, wear their Che Guevara shirt or their Lenin shirt and all that stuff really don't understand the inner workings of what's going on in Russia. You're explaining today, we're talking about this guy, Kirill Dmitriev, right? Like, I think it was great the way you explained that he's the Witkoff over there. And he thinks we're aligned because of these Christian Judaic values of sorts and stuff. Because that's also something else I learned is that Russia will always recognize Israel. Yeah, they might not fund the genocide and give them the weapons to do so, or give them a lot of weapons to you know, for their Iron Dome the way we do, but they'll provide some, and they'll always recognize what's going on. So I understand that there's a relationship, and even Lavrov, who comes off as like a very pro-Zionist person at times, but not. There's a relationship going on between Russia and Israel, whether it be a kind of like, remember in Colombia, that German dude who was like, couldn't talk bad about Israel at all because there's kind of like that stain of Germany of what they did. So they always have to be in this position of like being apologetic and never being criticized, critical of Israel because of their role, what Germany played and the killing of so many Jews. Well, I feel like Russians have that kind of same kind of mentality of sorts because of the pogroms that took place, which even kind of like assisted or led to some of the rightfulness of, you know, Zionists to say, hey, we need a land in, you know, of our own because we're getting killed and slaughtered in parts of, you know, Russia, right? Like before the you know, the Russian times, before the, you know, the Putin's government and what Russia is today. They have that kind of relationship. Okay, we understand all that there. Russia has a relationship with Israel and whatnot. But when, at what time led to the 86ing of the Assad government by Russia? So much to the fact that they had to go and align themselves with the new government coming in to keep these bases is what you're saying. What happened exactly to say, okay, we're done with Assad now, we're moving on? Was it something where they saw it happening and like, we have no choice? If we don't make an alignment with Jolani and the new government, we can lose a lot of our foothold over there. Maybe some of the corridors you talked about. I don't know, fam. Is there something that happened where Russia said enough, we have to 86 Assad, or was it naturally happening and they were just going with the flow?
Yeah, I mean, I think both are true, right? Like this is a conversation I've had at length with Vanessa, and this is something that she's probably one of the most well-equipped people to talk about, because it was quite complex, and it's not like, you know, the Russians were shooting down as some have claimed out there. The Russians were shooting at Syrian, you know, at Syrian military forces, but it's like they had long stepped off already. There were conversations that were had prior to the fall of Assad that pretty much looked like there was a deal made for Russia to step off. Also, the push of Assad towards the Gulf, because remember, Russia also has a relationship with Saudi Arabia, with Qatar, and these are actually the factions that directly are being used to push Greater Israel, to basically attack and isolate Iran. It is literally stated everywhere, but especially in WikiLeaks, in the emails between Hillary Clinton and I forget who, but she was emailing back and forth. And these are in the leaked WikiLeaks emails that specifically they were going to use the Gulf, Saudi Arabia, to isolate Iran and eventually then attack Syria, get rid of Assad, and then go after Lebanon in order to be able to open up the expansion of Greater Israel, implement the David's Corridor, and essentially expand Israel beyond that. So what we're seeing happen now is literally what they said in those emails. But Russia has always acted as a neutral, I guess a neutral sector, a neutral player in the region. But by not doing anything, by not, for example, shooting down Israeli warplanes that they could have done many times, they are effectively aiding Israel in that way, right? And so they look at it as like, we need to do whatever we need to do to protect the Russian people and our interests. And that's what we're going to do. And you could say that that's fine because, you know, every country should be looking to protect the interests of their people. It's a very nationalist point of view, but it's a point of view that in a way could be respected based on the history of Russia and everything they've gone through and all of that. However, is it ultimately going to benefit them in the long run? Not necessarily. My issue with people is how they've looked at Russia as still being the Soviet Union, still having this ideologically anti-imperialist point of view, which the current administration does not have. You could have said that the Soviet Union had an idealistic, ideology-based point of view, but Putin does not. They're looking at things very pragmatically, and you can criticize that or you can justify it in any way you want. But what I'm saying is that is their realpolitik is that it is extremely pragmatic. It is not based on ideology. Now, somebody brought up Iran. They don't have a defense pact with Iran. They don't have a defense pact with Iran. They have a strategic partnership, which is entirely different. That means that if somebody, say Israel or the United States, attack Iran, kind of like they already did, Russia can choose to aid with certain weapons like they did in Syria. But guess what? Those weapons were not used because people had to be trained for them. So the weapons that are reportedly being sent to Venezuela, unless Russia sends people to actually train the Venezuelans how to use them, the Venezuelans won't be able to use them. So while, for example, the way they move is if our allies benefit from this strategic move, that's great. If they don't, well, we need to keep moving as this is the approach. Now, that's the more, I would say, political aspect of Russia right now. The military aspect, when it comes to Ukraine and the United States, is highly, highly critical in many ways of Putin, because they look at, why are you talking to Donald Trump? Why aren't you being more aggressive towards Ukraine? Why aren't we moving on this issue? Why aren't we shutting this down right now? Like they don't want these conversations. They're looking at these conversations with Trump and being like, what are you doing? Why are we wasting time with the Americans? The Americans aren't interested in the well-being of Russia. They're not interested in peace. And they're right in a way. Like they're not. Like the deep state, again, is not. Now, is Russia the main adversary to the United States right now? No, China is. And if there can be an attempt to eventually create a sort of, competition and an ability for the US to compete against China, they're going to do whatever they can. Russia has proven to be a very valuable, very effective player. They have proven to be far mightier than the EU and NATO. I mean, right now, if I'm an outsider and I'm looking at what Russia's done with their military, what they've been able to do to sustain sanctions in spite of, yes, like sanctions always hurt at some point, but they've been able to, at a global level, I would say more than at domestic level, but at a global level, fight off the sanctions well. They've been able to have their people live, for the most part, free. I mean, people in Moscow live like there's no war going on. You don't feel it, you don't see it, kind of like in the US. So they've been able to achieve that. So if I'm Washington, I'm looking at them as a major player. And when you look at what BRICS is promoting, they're promoting a multipolar world. That includes Saudi Arabia. And I have to say that again. The entity that commits human rights violations, that is one of the most horrible it is included in BRICS. You have India. That could also be argued of Modi's presidency. You also have Brazil. You have South Africa. You have Russia. You have China. What does a multipolar world mean? It means literally multiple powers at the helm. And that is what they're pushing. They're pushing the UN Charter, which is essentially the UN, the type of organization of the UN. So now, after saying all of this is just a beginning, because I could be here all day trying to like get across like a lot of the differences and nuances, because again, Russia's not a monolith. There are different parties here with different beliefs. Putin's current, the people around him, though, are primarily conservative in terms of social values, right? And that's not necessarily a bad thing. And nobody's here is criticizing that aspect at all. But it's the reality of looking at it as it is, rather as we would like it to be. People think that Russia is going to come to the rescue of the resistance, and that's not their mentality at all. Their mentality is, let's expand, let's work with everybody, let's have, you know, in spite of our supposed allyship, we're going to do what we need to do for our people. And they also have a base, by the way, in Africa as well. So a lot of this is never talked about. Anything to say before I go into Dmitriev, because
this is so interesting, because the two things I have to say is, so you're saying when it comes to Russia, like hesitating on shooting down Israeli warplanes, their non-interventionism was actually them choosing a side, right? They could have done this, but
they're never going to attack Israel. Yeah. They believe in a two-state solution. That's their bottom line. They're not going to go after Israel. Some of them, Russia's most powerful oligarchs are Israeli. Some of Russia's, I would say, cultural centers. We have an autonomous Jewish zone in Russia. I mean, you have almost 2 million Russians living in Israel. You have this relationship, and it's not been hidden. Russia's never hid. That's the thing about them. They won't hide what they're doing. They're not hiding it. They're not necessarily highlighting it, but they're not hiding it. It's out there. People have decided to not talk about these giant elephants in the room and pretend they don't exist, because I guess it doesn't serve the purpose of what they're talking about. But if you talk to regular Russians and local Russians, you get a different picture. Like, is Russia a Christian nation? No. You have a lot of people who are not religious at all, but you get promoted that all this orthodoxy. Yeah, some people follow it, but not everybody. So it's just kind of and also, and that happens with the LGBT stuff too. It's like, yes, there are gay people in Russia, but they don't just go around promoting it. Yeah. It's just a different aspect. And I think you all get one lens. So you either get the lens from NATO that's like mainstream media says, Putin is Hitler and he's going to go and take over the world and he's just awful and he's out there shooting gay people. That's what you get from the Western media. But then you get the other side that's just everything is perfect in Russia because I'm a Westerner that makes a lot of money, and of course it's going to be cheaper for me in Russia, duh. But you don't need to hear about that. You're just going to get promoted this idea, and you're going to get promoted that everything everybody is just perfectly aligned politically, and that's just not the case. And so I, as a journalist, wouldn't be doing my job if I wasn't promoting a more substantial, a more full picture of what it actually is. And that's kind of where I'm going with this. It's we need to really understand our biases and the way we like to view things versus what things actually are. And again, this NATO narrative is false, but so is everything is peaches and perfect. And the same with the China people. The China people, China's perfect. No place is perfect, guys. Literally not a single place. Okay. And I would say the closest place to that must be Nicaragua. I mean, in terms of I want to move so many things, and we could go into that. But okay, let me
make this last question though. I have one last question, because that was all right. So I get what you're saying there. All right. So you're saying that you're a multipolar world. What is that exactly? It's other superpowers, Brazil, Russia, India, China. Once again, not all roses over there. But if we are still comparing the two, and maybe it should be like politics in the United States. We don't have to vote Republican or Democrat. There's a third choice. Go over there, look at the third choice. It's on your ballot. I don't want to hear anything about it. It's there. Shut up. Don't tell me that you got to vote for one of the lesser two evils. Otherwise, you're not doing your duty. There's a third choice. Go look at it. Can the same thing be said if you're looking at this multipolar world? Because if you're still looking at those other superpowers, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South America, their behavior is still very different than the United States, Israel, and Europe, where they have all these other bases. They drop bombs, the constant regime change, the meddling and stuff. I understand there's something going on, and you're pointing out that example with Vanessa talking about the way China is kind of like manipulating things in the Sudan. But that behavior of those other superpowers still is not equivalent to what the West is doing, and United States, Israel, where they have all these bases and these colonization projects going on, and they're killing somebody. Isn't it still better with those BRICS nations and stuff with simply their anti-imperialistic behavior?
I don't think so you're saying a couple things here. Nobody said it was worse or that it's the same. There are people there who say, Russia and China are just as imperialist as the United States. I wouldn't say that, but I would say that they are building upon their expansionism is geared. It's working in a global capitalist system. I reject the idea now, after so much that I've been reading on China, that they're not engaged in capitalism. They're 100% absolutely engaged in capitalism. Maybe not at the domestic level that people, are looking at, but their economy and their global expansion is very much a capitalist. It's capitalist driven, and Russia is obviously a capitalist country. I know that's a wake up call to many, but it is a very, very capitalist country. And there's so many things that I will do deep dives on, guys. But the thing is, like, it's not the same as the United States. You're absolutely right. The United States and Israel, they go in and take what they want, no questions asked. Russia, China, much more diplomatic in how they conduct their affairs. That's always been the case. They're not going to go in and just, full right attack. We always say this phrase, you catch more bees with honey. So their approach is entirely different. Their approach is diplomatic. Their approach is one that attempts to respect sovereignty. However, they do have their moments where I would say that there is like exploitation and expansion, especially honestly in China. I've seen that more in terms of Africa. So when it comes to Russia, we just see the expansion in Syria, the attempts to keep their bases. Now there might be a Russian-controlled part of Syria, which, if that happens, that's definitely working with the U.S. and Israel to make that happen. So if that does happen, it will be better, for example, for Syrians. They might be able to go back home because Russia is better than having Zionists or jihadists control the region. That is a fact. I mean, nobody's arguing that. But did some people suffer and have to fall for that to happen? Yeah. Are they taking advantage of the situation? Yeah. Like, so it's like, it's like we're not chastising here. We're not poo-pooing, Russia in that way, but I'm painting like a realistic picture of what it is, rather than I don't know. In my opinion, the analysis coming from a lot of people is just fawning over. There's no actual analysis of how things are going. It's more of like analysis of like how much greater Russia is or how much greater China is. It's not, yeah. And so China's economy is controlled by the Communist Party, not the capitalist class. So China is different. Okay, so it's controlled by the Communist Party, which is engaging in global capitalism and resource extraction and supplying Saudi Arabia weapons, supplying Israel. It's a lot of what it's using to continue its genocide. It's resource extracting in Africa. And so, yeah, I mean, I don't have time. We're not going to have time to go deep on that, but I definitely would love to have a discussion on that for sure. Yes, China has lifted its people out of poverty. It's got a lot of great things about it. I'm not against China. I'm not these people that are.
But it's not all roses, fam, right?
But it's not. I'm not going to ignore
the
reality of what else is happening. And I'm also not going to tell people that they need to be angry at China and rise up and no, that, or Russia. I mean, like, I would never do that. That's ridiculous. These are sovereign countries, and the people there have the right to make those decisions. I am a resident, though, of Russia. You know, I do live here and I do know what I'm talking about. But at the same time, like, you know, I do always make an effort to say these are sovereign countries. You know, this is a perspective of mine, but it's also one that I would say is rooted in being here and surrounded by Russians that aren't only political or of the political class, which is an extremely different thing. And I think people only get that one message. So possibly, before we're here all night, because I think this is interesting and I knew it would be, I want to go into Dmitriev. So let's pull up his Wikipedia again. Let's just pull that up. I'm going to go through that. I'm just going to look at a couple things here. So this is Putin's top advisor. And if you didn't know he was Putin's top advisor, how would you look at this differently? Okay. So this is Kirill Alexandrovich Dmitriev. Okay. He was born in Ukraine when Ukraine was part of the Soviet Union, by the way. So he's a Russian CEO and businessman, and you can find this outside of Wikipedia. Wikipedia was just like the easiest thing. That's why I'm using it. I don't rely on Wikipedia, but it just had everything on there. He was a part of the Russian Direct Investment Fund. Now, the Russian Direct Investment Fund also had an American part, okay? And he was educated in both Harvard and Stanford. He got his BA in Stanford and then his MBA in Harvard. Those are two of the intelligence sectors where, you know, a lot of the intelligence people get their education from. Now, I want to move on to how he was recruited by McKinsey when he first graduated Harvard. So he worked for McKinsey. He then worked in a consultancy called Los Angeles, Moscow, and Prague. He became very, very like influential in not just Russian business, but he pretty much stuck his tentacles all over the American corporate sector, including Goldman Sachs, where he was an investment banker in Goldman Sachs. Then the U.S. Russian Investment Fund was also created while he worked for a private equity firm there. Then he even went on to work for General Electric. He went on and on and on. And in 2010, he was named as a young global leader by the World Economic Forum.
Is this in the
Yeah.
Can you move down, Jayme? And we're kind of looking. You got to scroll this a little bit. She's been talking about this down
So
below.
just a little bit. Yeah. If you go there, you can see what I said, and then just scroll down a little bit more. There it is. Recruited by McKinsey. Okay. Transition to Goldman Sachs as an investment banker. Okay. I'll just follow Jayme. Jayme, if you can just scroll down a little bit so that way you guys know what I'm looking at. In 2010, the World Economic Forum selected him to be a young global leader. And then he was elected as vice president of the Russian Union of Industrialists and Entrepreneurs. Okay, so if you can go down a little bit more. Okay, let's see here. No, down. I think, okay, yeah. Wait, okay, hold on, sorry, go back. You're going way too fast. Way too fast. Hold on, let me see if I can find what I was looking for here. Blah, blah. So, right under the Russian Direct Investment Fund, I just want to point out that he also has heavily invested with his petroleum. He was also working for Gazprom. He's also the head of that, among others. But he was also working with Saudi Arabia, the UAE, China, Qatar, and Kuwait. Okay, so these are other partners he's had. Also BlackRock, One Equity Partners, Goldman Sachs, Dutch Bank. And he had, of course, a good relationship, very close relationship with Mohammed bin Salman. So Russia, again, in general, the Russian political class has had a relationship with Saudi Arabia. If you go down to there, you can just stop there. I'll look at that right now real quickly. So in Russia, Gazprom is probably one of the biggest things. Gazprom is the gas. Then Gazprom Bank is the bank that one of the major banks in Russia. So he's involved in pretty much every aspect of the upper echelons of Russia. He was involved in politics in the Duma. Now, if you go scroll down to under other activities, I just want to highlight this part here. In January 2017, okay, right there, Dmitriev met with Eric Prince, the founder of the private military company Blackwater, George Nader, and the UAE Crown Prince Mohammed bin Zayed Al Nahyan, known as MBZ. So this meeting was representing the transition team of Donald Trump. So I just want to pretty much highlight that by saying his relationship with Donald Trump goes back further than this current administration. It goes back to the former administration. And I just want to highlight that because this is nothing new. He's had a relationship with Trump, and he's had a relationship not just with Trump, but with like key sectors in the US government, key corporate sectors. So his whole agenda, like what he is tasked to do, right? And they go talk about his relationship with Jared Kushner, Stephen Witkoff, Robert Mueller. They go a little bit deeper in that. But what I want to just highlight here is it's no surprise that he's the guy to form these sort of attempts at having conversations about cooperation between the United States and Russia. There's a lot of things that he's had his hands in terms of his influence. He's a very well related person. He knows a lot of people. He's had a lot of experience in economic sectors, very corporate and important economic sectors, right? All over the United States and in Russia. So he understands the Russian perspective and he understands the American perspective, and he understands how those could possibly come together. So from that aspect, of course, that's like a pragmatic aspect to be like, okay, this is a go-to guy. But what does that tell you of where Russia is going in terms of the United States? Having this guy be the one that's leading the charge. This guy is not anti-US. This guy is not anti-imperialist. This guy is not anti-corporate. This guy is in favor of normalizing with the United States. Putin is not dumb. He's not going to have somebody that he doesn't trust or who doesn't follow his vision in charge, unless, of course, he wouldn't be in charge, which I wouldn't say that, to be honest, at this point. And so the people around him have specific roles and important roles. And the Russians have, when they voice themselves to the world, they seem put together. They know what they're talking about. They don't say things without having thought about them, like for a long time. You know, when they make a move, it's a move that they've thought of. They don't do things impulsively. Nothing they do is impulsive. Everything from the bureaucratic system to everything you see in government is not impulsive. It is thought out. It is detailed. It is tediously planned in a sense of just, it might be chaotic and disorganized to a degree, but what's put out there is thought through. Whereas, you know, we can be very organized in some aspects, like from a Western American Anglo perspective, and we would like just give up with Russia's chaoticness. But when it comes to putting ourselves out there and saying what we say, we don't think twice and we just like blare it out, right? So it's an interesting dynamic. Kirill Dmitriev wouldn't be in the position he's in if he wasn't selected specifically for having the knowledge of the ins and outs of the United States, and with the key people he's had conversations with. Now, if you looked at his resume or everything you read just now, if everything you saw, and you didn't know he was Putin's guy, what would you guys think about him? It's a question I want to ask you, fam, to start.
Well, I mean, I think right off the bat, when you look at this guy, you wouldn't think that's this guy. You think that he would be Putin's opposition, from what we've been told. Not
right.
Putin's. You wouldn't think he's his guy, but I think you exposed it, and I think you've also. I mean, this makes so much sense of a lot of the media stuff that's been happening and the people they've been backing over there. They want this cultural Christian shit there, and I can understand why some of the generals would be kind of a little ticked off with the Russian Federation and Putin.
Yeah, and yeah.
So this guy would be his opposition. BlackRock? Okay, no.
You would think that. I literally am not surprised at all, because it makes sense to me now, knowing what I know and understanding what I know, because a lot of people have created this idea of Russia being what it isn't.
Yeah.
And you should respect and feel however you want about Russia, but it is what it is. Like, it is not what we should make it out to be, whether that's positive or negative. And for me, there's a lot of I love about Russia and Russians, and the culture and a lot of things. And there's a lot of things I agree with Putin on, and there's some things I don't agree with him on. But regardless, I'm not a Russian. I'm not here to tell Russians what they should or shouldn't think. I'm speaking to Americans who have created a picture of Russia, or the so-called anti-imperialists who assume that Russia is going to act in an ideological way that it isn't. It is a pragmatic actor in the global system, and at least in terms of the current Putin, administration, I would say. And so it's important that we get rid of our biases. It's important that we look at the facts and look at how things are operating, to understand things, to not be blindsided when certain things happen. When, for example, I've been saying, Russia wants to normalize with the United States. Russia wants to normalize with the United States. It's because they're doing it in their own way. Is that going to benefit Russia? In my opinion, no. At the end of the day, there are some things that we do that are more efficient, but the reality is it comes at a cost. It comes at a cost of losing your identity. It comes at the cost of having U.S. intervention. It comes at the cost of a lot of things. And when you have a guy that was named a World Economic Forum young global leader advising Putin, who has worked with Eric Prince, Blackwater, who's had his hands in McKinsey, BlackRock, does that worry me in terms of where Russia's going? Absolutely. If this was anybody else, the majority of progressives and leftists or multipolar people would be like, oh my God, get this guy out of here. That's what they would say. But because it's Russia, they sort of ignored it. And so that you're not getting the full analysis here. If you're missing that chunk, because you're not going to understand the next few moves that are coming. So I think it's important that you all know who this guy is and what he's been doing, and just go on his Twitter and you'll get a wide picture of him, whatever it is you might think. But for me, it's just important to highlight it and to talk about it. Do I think it kind of points to what Russia wants in terms of the U.S.? Absolutely. And I think that's why we will see, or that's why we are seeing an effort from the Putin administration to end this war, because they want to. They see it as a necessity to end it, not just for themselves, but in terms of the war, but in terms of just, okay, let's make some economic deals. Let's build on this cooperation. That will be looked on or twisted as being a positive thing, right? We're seeing that already. Russia and America can be friends. But for me, as somebody that loves Russia, that really appreciates a lot of things about it, I always caution, because I don't trust the U.S. deep state to ever look at Russia as an equal partner. Russia wants a seat at the table, guys. They don't want to turn over the table and take it on and light it on fire. That's not who they are. That may have been the Soviet Union. That is no longer the Russian Federation. The Russian Federation is the Russian Federation. They're not the Soviet Union. They don't want to blow everything up. They want to have conversations. They want a seat at the table. They want to compete in a global market. Whatever you may think of that, it's a normal thing to want as a state, as a sovereign entity, right? In an ideological sense, moral sense, we can fault this and that, whatever, and I can have those conversations as well. But in a sense of just looking at it from a logical basis, that's the majority of what countries are doing, including China, including Russia, including a lot of these countries that are trying to survive. And you also have to add the fact that the United States, of course, has been completely vilifying Russia for a long time. And that is a fact that is not, that's undeniable. But even so, there is a desire from Moscow to have a good relationship with the United States. And the fact that nobody's talking about this, that people are literally just like completely ignoring it, it just signals to me like people are either purposely ignoring it because it doesn't serve their narrative or just like unaware of it. So there I am making it aware. I don't know.
I think it's a little bit of column A and a little bit of column B, fam. So interesting stuff. It really, I have a different perspective even as today. On how to look at things, and like I said, I can understand why the military might be a little bit pissed off at what the Russian Federation is doing, understanding that, hey, man, they're never going to be nice to us. They're never going to play ball. They're always going to try to balkanize us. Let's just cut them off. We can't do business with them. Why are you talking to Donald Trump? But there's multiple players going on, and I can understand that they want a seat at the table because they also have 10 or 11 time zones, right? They probably got a lot of resources and stuff they want to sell to the global market, and you can get the best price from America because they'll pay the highest price. So why not get that money? Why not plug in? So, back in the days, I thought Putin at one point wanted to join NATO, right?
He did twice.
So, come on. This is not too far-fetched to see what's going on, especially when you're laying it out with this guy. So I'm going to pay attention to when Putin's hanging around with this guy, see if they're in the same pictures together, and then say, oh, there we go. We can see what's going on. But great stuff, fam. Anything else?
No, that's it. I'll have I put out the latest conversation I've had with Vanessa on Substack. We talk more about this, and that's it. And it'll be on YouTube too shortly. So
check it on out, guys. All the ways to help us down below. Thank you so much for a good crowd for joining us today. We'll be back on Wednesday. So that's it. Take a look at what's going on in Nigeria. Understand what's going on with Russia, Ukraine, and more or less who Russia is. For Pasta Jardula, Fiorella Isabel, CheeseSlice on the 1s and 2s. That's it. Time to go away. We'll see you back on Wednesday. Truth out.